In 1991, the United States stood unchallenged. The Cold War was over. The Berlin Wall had come down 2 years before, and now the red flag of the Soviet Union had been lowered for the last time in Moscow. Francis Fukuyama, the American political scientist, hubristically pronounced this moment the end of history. This would be a triumph of liberal democracy, an usher in a new era of democracy worldwide. Russia was humbled. China was expected to go the same way. The Chinese Communist Party, it was said, would reform and accept the inevitability of democracy or collapse. So as Russia invades Ukraine, as China eyes off Taiwan, we now know for sure, history did not end. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 1 minute, 1 second, 1 minute, and 1 second blast sites across Ukrainian cities of Kiev, Kharkiv and Chuhuiv. The US talks a tough game, it rallies allies, hits back with sanctions, moves its troops around the world, but it won't fight. President Joe Biden said as much. He will not put American lives on the line to defend the sovereignty of democratic Ukraine. That's an invitation to Vladimir Putin. Xi Jinping would be wondering if the US will spill blood for Taiwan. The last they saw of the US military, it was retreating from Afghanistan, and after 20 years the Taliban was claiming victory. The question now is, what happened to America? How did the world go from the unipolar moment to the end of the American order? What happened to America? Where to begin? 1991. The US had an opportunity then to bring a humbled Russia in closer. It was an opportunity lost. 1998. Bill Clinton impeached for his tawdry abuse of power. His lies about his sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky demeaned the office of the president and turned the White House into a reality TV program. 2001. Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda launched a terrorist attack on US soil. America responded with war on Afghanistan. We know now how that ended. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 24 seconds 24S tanks and military vehicles roll across the Ukraine-Crimea border. 2003. George W. Bush decided to invade Iraq on the pretense of Saddam Hussein hoarding weapons of mass destruction. The US attacked without UN sanction. It was accused of breaching international law, upending the rules-based global order America had written. The Iraq invasion damaged American credibility and prestige. It triggered a power vacuum that spilled over in the region, tipping neighboring countries like Syria into civil war. Terror groups became emboldened, leading to Islamic State eventually declaring a caliphate. 2007. The US's corrupt banking system collapsed, triggering a global financial crisis that cost Americans their jobs and their houses while the bankers were saved. Too big to fail, we were told. This sowed the seeds for the angry backlash of those who felt abandoned by their own country. The line from bailing out Wall Street bankers to Donald Trump's presidency was clear. 2008. The election of Barack Obama supposedly promised hope, and yes, we can. The first black president. The so-called post-racial America and race anger only intensified. Obama left the world and America weaker. On his watch, North Korea stockpiled its nuclear arsenal. China claimed and militarized the disputed islands of the South China Sea. Putin annexed Crimea. IS carved out its caliphate. Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people. Iran made a fortune out of its nuclear deal, halting but not abandoning its pursuit of nuclear weapons, and used the windfall to fund terrorism in the Middle East. 2016. The Trump presidency. A man who exploited the worst of America, trashed alliances, cozied up to despots, yet was a symptom of a system already poisonous. 2021. Joe Biden abandoned Afghanistan. The images of troops leaving and helicopters in the air resembled the fall of Saigon. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 1 minute 5 seconds 1 minute and 5 seconds. United States imposes new sanctions on Russian banks and businesses in response to Ukraine invasion. The last 30 years have been a persistent erosion of American power and prestige. The US is a nation in search of its soul and moral purpose. It has been led by a succession of timid, or reckless, or vapid, or exploitative, and opportunist presidents. International politics expert Jonathan Holslag calls them polite cowards. Those leaders who talk up democracy while ignoring the people in their own countries whom democracy is failing. Each leader has presided over the drift from the American dream. Inequality has grown like a cancer. Decades of decline. Research by economists and Case and Angus Deaton reveals the wealth of someone in the top 1% of society is 950 times greater than a member of the bottom 50%. Case and Deaton tell of an America of broken families, drug dependency, increasing suicide, declining wages, or no work at all. To these people, they say, Washington politics looks more like a racket. But the unraveling began decades earlier. The heady days of Cold War victory obscured deeper cracks in the US. The US talks a tough game, it rallies allies, it hits back with sanctions, it moves its troops around the world, but Joe Biden says he won't put American troops on the ground in Ukraine. Carlos Barria. As political scientist Joseph Nye said, the United States stopped paying attention to the world and turned its sights inward. American leaders became arrogant about our power, arguing that we did not need to heed other nations. We seemed both invincible and invulnerable. 1989 was a watershed, but, in hindsight, not for the reasons we first thought. In his book, World Politics Since 1989, Holslag writes, "The high tide of globalization appeared to hold opportunities for all. What did we get? Nationalism and authoritarianism," he said, "are on the offense. Resentment is rising and there are disputes everywhere over territory." From crisis to crisis, Holslag said, the Western world lost more of its power. America and the broader West, he said, needs civic renewal but instead is mired in culture wars that chip away at the foundations that made the West strong in the first place. The United States is still the most powerful military in the world, with the biggest economy. The world still looks to America. The US is the bedrock of Australian security. Democracy, however imperfect, has a moral purpose that authoritarianism not only lacks but fears. Right now American resolve is crucial. And yet we can see the sunset of the American century. It isn't a foreign power that will defeat the US as much as it will defeat itself. Like empires past, it rots from the inside. The likes of Putin and 11 sense their moment. We are left with the question, where did America go? Presidents from Bush to Obama to Trump said the US did not need to be the world's policeman. Now Biden tells us America is back. How the poor, suffering people being bombarded in Ukraine must hope that is true. Stan Grant is the ABC's international affairs analyst and presents China Tonight on Monday at 9:35 p.m. on ABC TV, and Tuesday at 8 p.m. on the ABC News Channel.